Rev done tuned out again. I don't think Rev is realizing
All right.
they are cutting the camera off.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be at this present time, at this present um, place. Unity Fellowship Charleston welcomes you once again to our Wednesday night discussion for this month of June. So, as we know, part of Unity Fellowship movement, June is Men's Month. And we came up with a theme this month or this year called Masculine is Genderless. And we had several panels that was on the past couple of Wednesdays, but tonight we are celebrating our trans community. Yes, we're going to celebrate our trans community. We have some awesome guests tonight. And the title for tonight is In Truth, What Are You Serving? So basically, we'll get the ins and outs and find out their life, what they've done, what they're doing, what they're all about. We get to know them a little bit better, a little bit closer tonight. So I encourage you to come on in the room, come on and join us in and sit back, relax, and enjoy. Another thing, if you like this and you want this to continue going, please help us out with some donations. We are on Cashapp, which is $favorby, and that can go to this. We do these discussions every Wednesday night. We just tested out this month, and if you like it, let us know. Give us the comment. Tell us all about it so we could keep it going. Why? Because we want to do this just for you, to keep you informed, to keep you happy, to keep you knowing what's going on in your community. All right, so let's go ahead and get this discussion started for tonight. I am your host or your facilitator, student clergy Quincy Noman. A lot of you see me around. I've been in New York. I've been all over. I've been California, Texas, everywhere, I'm home tonight, believe it or not. I'm not out there traveling, So I'm here with Unity Fellowship Charleston by way of Columbia. So we're going to go ahead and introduce our guests that we have tonight. So who want to go ahead and start us off tonight?
I'll start us off. I'm Minister Zarian. Most people call me Ice. I'm from UF Elgin, Texas, by way of California. So I'm here in Elgin representing Unity Fellowship Church movement. And that's what I'm doing out here, being a voice for my transgender siblings. So that's what I do, and that's where I come from. So I'll pass that one to the next one. We're gonna call our names, right? We're gonna call out names.
I'll go. I'll go next. I'm Reverend Devon Randolph Tinsley. Currently serving at New Hope Baptist UCC. I was part of the UFCM for 16 years until last year. I'm just excited about what I'm going to learn about my fellow panelists and ready to get it started.
All right. Well, I'm gonna jump in real quick. I'm Reverend Marcus Gastinex. I should fix my name, put some correctness on it. But Reverend Marcus Gastinex from Unity Fellowship Philadelphia, and yeah, just serving. That's serving. What are we serving? We just serving. Empowerment, enlightenment, all those wonderful things. Serving as assistant pastor of the Philadelphia church. So, everything else you'll find out in time.
I'm Reverend Sabrina from Unity Fellowship Church, New York City. And I'm honored to be on the panel with all of these amazing people, mighty people of serving God's people. That's what we do. We're serving a smorgasbord of stuff, things that enlighten, educate, empower, inspire. So that's what we're serving.
Okay, thank y'all. Thank you all for introducing yourselves and let us know where you're from. So, first question that I have for y'all here on the panel, do you think you were born the wrong gender? And so why? Who would like to go ahead and start us off with that question?
That's interesting.
So I was excited about this question. I was excited about this question. Because when I was 40 when I first realized that I could transition, that it was for me. It also coincided about the same time when I was originally ordained. So, I heard that the narrative was, I was born in the wrong body, God made mistakes, all of that. I'm not gonna say I disagree, but my viewpoint is different. I don't believe I was born in the wrong gender. I don't believe God made a mistake. My ministry is what it was supposed to be, and that's part of my ministry. So no, I don't believe I was born in the wrong gender.
I don't believe I was born in the wrong gender. As with Reverend Devon said, just didn't realize or to come into knowing how it was supposed to be. So I don't think I was born the wrong way or in the wrong gender. I was born in the gender that I was supposed to be for that time and for my own evolving into who I am to be. So
Yeah, I'm like, look, I'm glad y'all said it because that's how I feel. I don't feel like anything about me was wrong. Uncomfortable might be a word. And but I don't think that I was born in the wrong gender or born in the wrong body. I think that my journey was part of the plan. And so I look at it more as an evolution. That former side of me no longer serves me. It was uncomfortable, but I don't think it was wrong. I'm not one of those that completely tries to reject that past portion of my life. I was like, I embrace her. She was wonderful, you know. But I grew out of her and evolved into Marcus now. So I don't think that anything was wrong. I think everything was by plan. And it's part of the journey.
Just to piggyback off of what my brothers have said, no, I don't feel I was born in the wrong body. I believe my spirit was placed in this body so I could witness evolution. I believe my journey is on purpose because it's other trans brothers out there that's going through the same thing. So if they can look at me and say, look, that brother made it. Or they look at me and say, okay, I can be at that level of my transition and still have male essence. So I don't believe it was wrong because for one, I don't believe God makes mistakes. So no, I don't believe it was wrong.
Okay, great. So we learned so far that we don't believe that was wrong. We believe it's more of an evolution and coming in to one spiritually of what your journey is. And with that being said, that brings me to my next question. What is your pronoun and why do you think that's important?
My pronoun, you want to put it is like they, them, Sabrina. And I think it's important just for respect and acknowledgement of who I am as a person, as a being. That's all, just being respectful.
Let's see. Well, I go by he, him, his, Marcus, are my pronouns, and they're important. Yeah, out of respect, because that's comfortable for me. And through this journey, I've worked very hard to get here. So, how they say, put some respect on my name. It's gonna be Mr. X or he, him, his. All of those great things. But yeah, to acknowledge who I am as a person and honor the work that I've done to become this person.
That's a good one, brother. That's a good one right there. Because what I was gonna say, the reason why it's important to me, because my transition was on purpose. It was on purpose. So calling me by my proper pronouns, for one, shows respect, and for two, it shows me that you see me. Not that you see the shell, you see me. So, yeah, that's why the pronouns are important, and to some degree, it also represents a level of acceptance. So, yeah, that's where I'm at with those pronouns.
So for me, pronouns aren't as important. I mean, I go by he, him, his pronoun. But at this stage in my transition, pronouns aren't as important because people don't generally get them wrong. Early in my transition, as a show of respect, as a show of support, as a show of alliance with me, then it was important. But at this point, it's kind of like I have passing privilege, so I don't. It's not even. I don't have to ask people to refer to me properly anymore. So yeah, they're not as important to me. I don't think about them as much as I used to early on.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. So a lot of us is basically, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, no, I was like, I was thinking about it, and yeah, kind of the same thing. Like at this point in time, yeah, most people don't get it wrong. But then I had to laugh. I was like, there's certain like exceptions, and those people know exactly who they are because we get to talking real good, and they're like, girl, and I'm like, girl. But that's not a regular. But I was like, I gotta acknowledge those people that I got that kind of rapport with, and we get sassy, I guess you could call it, every once and again. But yeah, like the thing with pronouns, like I just wanted to touch on was like, people that have been kind of like transitioning with us and like, slip ups happen. But you can feel a difference when someone's being journeying with you versus just trying to disrespect you. Because I was like, I have people in my life that have been like, they'll be like, what's your name now? and it's okay. The biggest thing is just you can feel it when someone's trying to be disrespectful and when somebody is growing with you. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I can feel you on that. That's true. And with that girl thing, don't feel bad. My friends do me like that too. They get all the hype. Girl, I'm like, ain't no girl here, but no, I understand. So we learned about pronouns is it's about respect, like you said, put some respect on it. And then for others, it's not really a big deal of the pronoun. So you did mention, Reverend Marcus, about putting respect on what you put in to. So that leads me to a question. Was there a process to get to where you're at right now? What was your process?
It's that's a lot. There was a lot to the process. You have your process of coming to like your own internal understanding, and then you got to figure out what you're going to do externally. For me, it has always been kind of an evolution kind of thing. When I was younger, I didn't have the words to really articulate what transness was, because that wasn't a thing that was talked about, when you're younger. But that process, mentally, emotionally, physically, are a lot of different things. I'm gonna pause right there. I'm gonna see what else somebody else got to say, because I was like, oh gosh, it's so deep.
That's fine. Be deep as you need to. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is a deep question. That's a deep question for me, because with me, my process, I had to make sure my mind, heart, and soul aligned with what I felt. So that was a process. I had to go through a spiritual process, connecting that to old religion. So that was a process.
Yeah.
Then I had to go through that process as to, are you going to be able to deal with rejection? Because once you start transitioning, you're going to lose some folk. You really are. So it's definitely a process, and I think everybody's process may be slightly different and also similar. So that was my process.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I was gonna go with it. I was raised by a Pentecostal preacher mom, so even first off, let's start there. But then I didn't know any trans men of color. I knew trans women, but I didn't know any trans men of color, so I didn't even know it was the same for me. And then when I finally got to see men transitioning, they still didn't look like me until I was almost 30 years old. And then I had to deal with deal with does this jive with what I believe spiritually? Does this jive with how I'm going to be able to interact with my family? Does this jive with what I want to do with my life? Am I going to be able to have a job and go to school and do all the things that I want to do with myself and transition? So that's why it took me so long. Like at 40, I just decided I can't do this anymore. Like I can't deny it anymore, and I can't be who people see anymore. I have to make it all align. I have to make who I see in the mirror jive with who I see in my head, who I know I am in my heart, and who my spirit is saying that I am. So yeah, it was a bunch of processes for me.
Yeah. I feel like in comparison to like a lot of like all of the mental and emotional stuff, like the legalities of it are easier in some sense than dealing and processing with everything going on in your head, because everything else is like boom, 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 or will my state allow me to do this or not? Yeah, like the on paper process is, in my opinion, easier to deal with than getting myself and my mind right to go through this process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I think, well, not that I think, it is a process. And to come to know yourself, to actually say, okay, this is me and I'm going to be me, that takes a great deal of courage. That takes a great deal of determination, because you're going so far, basically going against what is called the norm, or you're going, you just, you have to think, well, even for me, you have to think about the people. You don't have to. You can just say, the hell with y'all, and I'm just going to be me. But what comes up is how, if you love them, how are they going to feel? How are they going to react? And as you say, is how are you going to react? Can you take the rejection? Can you take the criticism? Can you take sometimes the loneliness? So it's a process. It's a very much a mental and spiritual and emotional process at first. Um, even even to think about, well, am I going to go through the whole transition, or am I going to stop here? Like I said, even for me, or those of two spirits, it's like, hey, am I going to go and say, all right, I'm going to give or acknowledge my male energy, or am I going to acknowledge my female energy, or am I just going to stay right where I am? So it's not just I'm just going to be like this. You wake up one day and it's like, oh yeah, this is me. It's definitely not that.
Also, although sometimes you may feel like that, just wake up one morning, I'm just gonna be the heck with everything. No, but yeah, I definitely can understand that. Hearing from y'all stories, it's kind of similar. Some people can relate in some ways. You have people who struggle day after day, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually about things that's going on in their lives. You know, should I act this way? What's going to happen if my family finds out? Is my friends going to turn their back on me? It's a lot that actually goes through that. So first of all, I want to appreciate y'all sharing that with us tonight. That takes a lot of courage just to even mix. There's a process that you have to battle with, that you have to deal with. It also take a lot of courage for someone to say, okay, I don't made up my mind. And especially what Reverend Sabrina said, I'm in touch with my male side, but I'm also in touch with the female side as well. Do I really have to choose? you know, so why can't I just be both when I feel like being, depending on the energy that's going on? So that's great. So that brings me to my next question. When you finally went through the process of the emotional process, of the mental process, of the spiritual process, and everything aligns to what you decided to do. So when did your transition start, and why did it take so long for you to start your transition?
Okay, I'll address that first. First, I'm going to address my physical transition. My physical transition started at the age of 50. Simply because I had to make sure everything was aligned. So it started at 50. But my actual, if we want to talk emotional, we want to talk a mental transition, that started at birth. I knew day one, as they say back in the day, I was different. So my thing is this: you can do all the physical altercations you want to, but if you're not lined up mentally, you wasting your money. You're wasting your money. So that's why it took me up until 50 because I was throwing back, what is my mama gonna think? What is my granny gonna think? Because the religion that I was brought up in was Jehovah Witness.
Mm.
And that LGB wasn't allowed or talked about when I came out. And if you would have threw that T up in there, they really wouldn't have understood that. So it took me to 50. It took me to 50 to get to the point where I did not care what other people thought. Because our great founder once said, "Why you worried about what other people think? They out living their life. They had a picnic, and you the one miserable." So I had to look at that. And then I also question, is it a mistake that I'm feeling this way? Why am I feeling this way? Am I feeling this way because of things that happened to me in my childhood? I had to go through all that. I had to go through. It was really a process. It really was. I'm gonna go back to that. It was really a process because I don't know how my male energy up here, siblings, why it was so long for them, but I know for me, when I was younger, I'm an incest survivor. So for a long time, I was confused more about my identity because I was going around thinking I was a gay man because of things that happened to me as a child. You know, because in my mind then, I was a boy. You couldn't tell me I wasn't a boy. And for a sexual act to happen between me and another male person, I was like, oh man, I'm about the biggest gay person on the planet.
Mhm.
So when I connected to being trans, man, that 50 years old was like being reborn. I was like, man, y'all don't know. When I got my first shot at 50, I ran out the doctor's office into the middle of the street in a shout because I felt free. I felt free. And I can think about it today, and it's just like yesterday. Like, man, let me visit that feeling. You know, every time there's a task in terms of another trans sibling that's not in a good space, I go back to that first shot. Let me share that energy with that individual. But that's my story, and I'll stick with it.
Yeah, I wasn't far behind. I was 42 when I started my physical transition, and it took me so long, like I said, because I had to reconcile all the voices, all the negative. Nobody's gonna love you. God didn't plan that, and all the things that were saying that's not what I should be doing. And it took me that long, but once I got to that point where I know who I am, I know who I see in the mirror, and that I need my outside to match my inside. Yeah. That was 42 for me.
Sure.
Right?
I think my physical transition came in stages also. Um, like we've been talking about, like the mental part was always a consistent thing. Like I remember when I was a kid and like when I would dream, I was a male in my dream. So that is how I dreamed. And you know, I'm thankful my parents let me be, which I know that it's a it's fairly rare, uncommon for parents to just be like, okay, because like they let me dress in all the masculine clothes I wanted to. Um, and I think as a kid, I took it for granted, but looking back on it, like, they were pretty phenomenal. Like, they went through their stuff with me, but, you know, for them to just let me be and not so much force me to, try to fit into this kind of mold was really beautiful. There's only rare occasions that I had to wear dresses. I think in my grade school years, for like Easter, like grade school when you was a kid. Funny story. There's a set of Easter pictures somewhere, me and my younger sister, and she is like happy, bubbly, and I've got the worst frown on my face. I don't know where those pictures are, but it was terrible. But my physical transition, in a sense, began in high school because I don't know what the medical terminology is or whatever, but I started growing facial hair in like 14, 15. Like I had to shave every single day. It was ridiculous.
I'm jealous.
So it wasn't cool. Like,
Mine starts in the 20s.
Yeah.
Yo, imagine being like a 14, 15-year-old girl in high school with a full man beard. Like it was ridiculous. But I came to a point when I was 22, when I decided that I did want to transition physically. And it was after I had a heart attack. I had a heart attack and emergency double bypass surgery. And it was in that moment because I was like, I can't die like this. And then in some semblances, part of that old me died on that operating table. And I was like, it was almost like a wake up call. And it was like, you've got a chance and an opportunity to live who you are. And so mentally, that's when I said, okay, enough is enough. I'm not playing no more games. But I still had to wait because I was in South Carolina at the time. I'm originally from South Carolina, and y'all know the South is, the laws in the South. I had doctors that had no idea what they were doing. I asked one of my doctors, I was like, hey, can you prescribe me hormones? He was like, and I appreciate his honesty because he was like, you don't want me to prescribe your hormones because I'll have you all messed up. And I was like, okay, I appreciate that. But it didn't help my situation. So I didn't begin to medically transition until I moved to Philadelphia in 2012, 2013, right around there. Because they have an LGBT friendly medical facility here. So that's when I began to actually receive my hormones, even though I had already had a beard for 6, 7, 12 years beforehand. But that was the start. It took me so long because the legality of South Carolina, which the name change was hilarious. But yeah, mostly legalities before I could medically transition, even though I had physically started to transition around 22. So yeah.
Hey, I noticed that the age started getting a little bit younger. It went from 50 to 42, 22. Go ahead, Reverend Spirit. I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry about that.
No, not at all, because I can't answer this question. The only thing I can with Reverend Marcus is, I was growing right here, and I would pluck. I'd take the little tweezers and pluck each and every hair out. That took some time, but other than that, so it was natural. And then it was expensive because you had to have 2 sets of clothes. It was expensive and confusing, and it was tiresome. It's like, you know what? What? I just don't want to be. This is tiring. This is confusing. It's painful. Thought about transitioning because it would have been easier, I thought, to be with women and not have to get beat up. But then it was that just not that it no, but then that was the other part. Okay, would I really be with women who want to be with me if they found out? So let me just be a lesbian, and that's it. I dress. My dad knew though. My dad knew because my mom and they were split up. They were friends, but they just couldn't live together. And when I would go out with him, he would have, he's like, okay, I don't know what to do with the girls, but his female friends would, and as you said, you have the frown on your face, and I just was uncomfortable. And then he took me he's like, try this one here, go get these. Because I wanted to play in the yard. I wanted to, scuff up and run and do all of this. He's like, nah, just put it on. He bought me the boys' clothes, and that was it. It was done. He's like, yeah, I know where to take you. So my dad knew, and he just let me be me.
That's good. That's amazing for him to let you be you. And also, Reverend Marcus, when you said that your family was, accepting, pretty much find you, that you wear boy clothes, it's like, wow, and that's actually great. So with that being said, it brings me to a question of rejection. Y'all were blessed enough, or most of y'all, some of y'all was blessed enough to have your families to have your back. But what if you was one of the ones that wasn't blessed enough to have their families have their back? How do you deal with rejection? Or have you ever been rejected? How did you deal with it?
A lot of praying.
A lot of what?
A lot of praying.
Right. Okay. That always helps.
Because with my, we're talking rejection when it comes to my family, I knew it was coming. My prayer was that God prepared me for it. My cousins were a lot more understanding than my aunts and uncles. My dad was a lot more understanding than my mom, which is sometimes surprising because usually dad is the one, no, I want my little princess, I want that. But in my dad's wisdom, he's seen he was not getting that. Don't do all that. So I would say with rejection, it hurts. Rejection does hurt, but that's in anybody's walk of life. You don't have to be trans to feel hurt from rejection.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that worked for me was talking to God. Which at first was hard to do because I came up where I was told you don't question God. So in the beginning, it was hard to have that conversation with God, because I had questions like, oh, why did you create me like this? Why did you make me a person that other folks wouldn't like or other folks wouldn't understand? You know, um, and then I realized me going through rejection was not for me. It was for other people who had to face it. It was for other people that I would come in contact with later, that I could talk to them and teach them how to deal with it. But but like but like it's known, rejection can hurt. It doesn't matter what walk of life. As they say, pain is pain. you know. So that's how I cope with rejection. That's how I deal with it. I take it to God and I ask God, what's the purpose for it? There's a lesson in it. What's the lesson? You know? And God gives me an answer. And sometimes it's not the answer I want, but God gives me an answer.
Okay. Anybody else want to share?
I'm convinced that I'm enough. And I say that because I don't give people a chance to, like, what I knew with my family, it was gonna be a struggle. So I just cut them off until I was ready to deal with them and they were ready to deal with me. And today we're good. There's still the slip up like somebody mentioned earlier, but for the most part, they respect who I am, and I'm good with them. The rejection that I couldn't really prepare for was when I came out and said, gay men were like, oh, I only date gay men. So I'm a man who's attracted to men. I think I qualify, but according to what you're saying, apparently I don't. So that took me a yeah. But yeah, so that I couldn't prepare. It, it, I had to rethink that and how I deal with that. And then I met people who were attracted to me. So I turned it into that's really about them. So that's what I am today. Like if somebody's not feeling me, then that's fine. You can't be everybody's cup of tea, and just keep it moving. So I guess I never really deal with rejection. It's just about them. It's not about me.
Yeah. I like how you said that. It's about them. It ain't about me. um, I I dig that. I dig that. That's good. I think for me, family wise, um, it wasn't so much rejection, but I did deal with a lot of fear of rejection, which is probably just as painful. um, because you get all of the emotions of being rejected before you're actually rejected. So then you sit in that for a while. And I was pretty similar to you, Reverend Devon. I don't know if I like all the way cut them off, but while I was scared of them rejecting me, I was away. Um, and I showed up at a few family functions and stuff like that, but I wasn't as engaged as I would have liked to have been. And so when I did come around, I had this conversation with my cousin, and he was like, sometimes you got to go through some stuff on your own, but the family was waiting on you for the most part. And this was like, I had been pretty much away for, I don't even know how long, maybe 10 years or so. I don't know. But all of that from a fear of being rejected and losing out on time and things like that. In like a romantic sense, I don't think I really gave anybody the opportunity to reject me, because I was like, no. I was very selective on, who I was even going to approach. A lot of times people already knew that I was trans. So I was like, all right, that's already out the way. So then, if you don't want to be with me, which I don't know why you wouldn't, because I'm a phenomenal Leo. But no, I was very selective, and really didn't put myself out there, which again probably could have been some missed opportunities, because I was afraid of rejection, because I dated all across the map. I think I personally identify as queer. I was like, I've dated all across the map, so I was like trying to pinpoint it into one little identity. I can't. So I was like kind of similar, like, and I think that's a evolution in and of itself as well, like how we evolve sexually through our transition. Because I had all kind of questions. I was like, am I gay? Do I just like women? What about everything in between? Okay, I like it all, whatever. But then the same kind of fears pop up. Like, I've heard similar kind of comments, like, dealing with cisgender men and stuff like that. Well, I only date quote unquote real men. I was like, what you trying to say, bro? Okay, whatever. All of those kind of fears. So I don't think I've, what? I ain't put myself in no position to be rejected. I was like, either you want it or you don't.
I love the confidence. That's what's up.
Yeah. I was like, we don't got time for games out here.
All right, so I have a question. Okay, what does it mean to be a trans man? Since we have all this confidence, what does it mean to be a trans man? And before you answer that, I want to reply to something that you said. To be honest with you, and I hope I'm not being rude or anything, I didn't even realize that you was female before. You actually, I thought you was just straight man. So whoever you went to did an awesome job. I was saying like that, but when I learned that you were this man, I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that. So I mean, kudos and great job. But back to the question, what I said was, what does it mean to be a trans man?
Student clergy said, whoever did it, great job. Well, see, first student clergy, hold on to this. Who did it was God. That's what.
Well, honestly, I did not know until you became ordained.
Right.
And like, oh, no, yeah, it was the first trans. What?
Yo, but you know what's funny? Like
And for Reverend Devon, I was, no, really?
What happened?
I know. Like,
I was like, I like the shout out Big G up top and good genetics. But that's interesting because, like, so many folks will say it was like, I had no idea. And I was like, and I came to some realization. I don't remember which convocation it was. I think we were in I think it was the last one in Charlotte a few years back. And I was like, nobody knows, which is real weird. I was like, nobody knows. Because a lot of times, like, I think I'm read more as gay, which I'm fine because, depends on the day I am, whatever. Um, so, and I was like, oh my God, nobody knows. Yeah. So good genetics, the great I am. I'm thankful for it. Thankful for it now. Yeah.
Sure. And I think
So
I
what
kind
does it mean to be a trans man? To your question, what does it mean to be a trans man?
Question.
For me, so most of what I do is because there was nobody like me when I was coming up, and so most of the time my contention is that I want to be beat for guys coming behind me, because we got to look at like suicide and and self harm and all of these things that trans men are the highest population of people doing these things. And why? Because you don't see yourself in anybody. There's no role models. There's nobody that you think you can tell. Nobody that you think will understand your struggle. So for me, being a trans man means that I'm vocal, that I'm visible, that I'm reaching back for generations to come.
Yeah. Right on. That's important though. Because we sure enough didn't have those examples to
No.
see melanated. I'll just take melanated. Like I felt like trying to find another Black trans man coming along was like, what? It's like they do exist.
Yeah.
Right.
For me, I think what it means to be a trans man is to be an intentional man. One of the things I think that's kind of not, well, I guess kind of overlooked, like as far as like in transition, is that we get to this point where we are creating who we want to be, and so it's a very intentional thing. It's one thing to just be like, general society and this is man, but I was like, no, it's very intentional on what kind of man I want to be. So, and then just being my most authentic self, I think gives other people, specifically cisgender men, permission to be themselves. Like you don't have to be this one kind of thing in a box. And as long as you're respectful, it's really not that deep as far as like what you view masculinity as. Like, so I think for me it's about being intentional every day on this thing called manhood. And not just falling into the box that society as a whole wants to put you in. Because I'll tell you, I was like, I don't fit it. I don't fit it. So I really lean in on the intentionality of who I am creating.
All right. For me, I would have to use the word powerful. And I don't mean powerful in a negative way. I mean powerful to the point that it delivered me. It set me free. Powerful to the point where I'm gonna take you back a little bit in music history. Gladys Knight has a song out and it's called "The Need to Be," and she talks about her needing her own little spot. That's what being a trans man did for me. It gave me my own spot. because I no longer have to be what you want me to be. So for me, it's powerful. It's powerful for me. Y'all just don't know. If y'all walked in my shoes, you would understand that. But it's powerful. Yeah. So yeah.
Yes, it is powerful, especially you can be who you are and freely be who you are. That's very powerful. It's also really good to be intentional and when you're being yourself. And speaking about being intentional and being yourself, someone mentioned to me about two-spirited. So I have a question. What does it mean to be two-spirited? Can you kind of tell us about that, what that means, and are you two-spirited?
I am two-spirited. And two-spirit is not bisexual. Some people say, oh, you're bisexual. No. And it's not saying, oh, you could have the best of both worlds. No, that's not what two-spirit is. Two-spirit is exactly that. Spirit. You have both the male and the female spirit in you. And it is, I say, I am linked between the two. Okay. In that, yes, I am the link between the two. Because and during the pandemic, and not just then, you got the mask on, you got your coat on, you got your hat on and everything. And there have been people who have still felt the male energy because I would get, excuse me, sir, or yo, bro, like that. So they couldn't tell. And no, I'm not, God has blessed me up here. So if you look there, it's like, no, you're not really all male. So, and then some people might feel that you're in transitioning. No, two-spirit is just that. You have both male and female spirits in you. And it's whatever energy that connects, the other person is connecting to, that's the energy. Because I've been, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, hey, girl, hey, bro. So that's what two-spirited is. And they think, oh, well, make up your mind. You want to be, I'm going to be me. I don't have to, there's no mind to make up. That's basically it. There's no mind to make up. Some may say, oh, male identified lesbian. Okay, if you want to put it like that. It's, but yes and no. Yes and no. It's just both are in you. You understand both. No, have not made the physical transition, and you don't have to.
That's good. But thank you for the breakdown of two-spirited. Anybody on here ever felt that other than Reverend Sabrina? No? Sometimes you feel like,
No.
okay.
Like, only when
But you
Beyonce
did.
playing.
I'm a little different from Reverend Sabrina. I personally I admire her strength to walk in those shoes. Because with me, I've always felt I had to be either or. You know, that's with me. Because baby, when I got up out of that drag when I was young, ooh, I was happy. So for Reverend Sabrina to be able to embrace both entities, I think that's wonderful. I, I've just never identified that way. I've never connected to female spirit that way. But yeah, I think you a beast, Rev. I think you a
Uh,
beast. You juggling all that because that's a lot right there.
Yeah, and surprisingly, not surprisingly, but as I say, as far as the energy that's going on, I have been all through my life been approached by men, even with the bit is approached by men, and and I was first like, oh, yeah, you being funny and like that, but there are men out there. It's like, nah, I like the hair. It's like, yeah. Oh, okay, all right. Thank you for the compliment, but yeah, you're not my
you'd be
type.
surprised.
Yes,
Yeah, but can you like it over there?
truly.
Like it over there. Don't like it up in here. Like it over there.
You're not my type. That's it. But yes. So they are.
Okay.
This didn't matter. They saw the feminine energy, and it's not that you're giving it. You're like, hey, yeah, no, no. It's not that you're giving it off. That's what's being shown. That's what's being connected to another person.
Right.
It just flows naturally.
Yes.
That's like
Great.
that's like having a twin. Dude, you get there thinking you finna meet the female essence and the brother shows up. That's cool. That could have helped me out when I was younger. That's
Okay. So when you said that, you'll say yo bro and they look at you like, okay, you don't look a man, but how do you deal with or handle like the stares from people in public? Or have you ever got stared down because you're not what they thought you were, or how the case may be? How do you handle that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Gotten the stares, gotten the kind of thing, especially on my job. And my job was a male-oriented job. So one, to have females come on the job, that was one thing. But now you have females who they don't look like, they try to hit on you. They try to, it's like, and when you don't, you get upset. But yes, you get the looks. And I noticed, and for safety reasons, I take note and just know to watch out or be a little cautious around certain people or in the area. But other than that, that's it. And surprisingly, on the other side, humans are humans and very wide range, because in one instance, the guys were more friendly than the women. Yeah. I don't know if the women was like jealous because, the guys were really friendly, and it wasn't like, oh, you wanted the boys, you wanted the guys kind of thing. No, it was very respectful in knowing female form, and that's the energy, I guess, that they were attracted to, but there was respect. And I got a lot of respect and protection from the guys. The women, they were kind of standoffish, and I guess thought that, oh well, I would make a pass at them or anything. I left them alone. So that's how I dealt with it. Look, this is me. I just came to do my job, or I'm here to shop. I'm not here for it. So yeah, you get the looks, and it's like, yeah, okay. Sometimes I say in my mind, jealous because you can't get this way.
Okay, take questions for everybody else on the
Well,
panel.
well, with me, it all depends what the environment is. If there's like a hostile environment, I have to stay on my toes. I have to watch it. You know, I can't get too comfortable. But if it's a different type of environment, it doesn't bother me because it always ends up sparking a conversation. You know, because if I catch it, I'll say hello or something like that, and then sometime they'll say, "Well, I was just wondering," and sometime I'll make it light and I'll make a joke, and I say, "Well, you were just wondering what?" And they'll say, "Well, we were just sitting over there wondering, was you a man or a woman?" And I have to Mission Impossible them. I'll say, "Well, see, if I tell you, then you're gonna self-destruct," and they'd be like, "Huh?" You know, so I make light of it. You know, I make light of
Just
it.
mess them up even more.
Yeah. Well, see, I find that if I make light of it, it makes them more relaxed. You know, it makes them. Or you know, I've had uh, a woman look at me one time like real strange, and I'm like, I asked her, "What's the problem?" And she says, "I was just wondering why my husband keeps looking over there." So I made light of it. I made a joke. I said, "Baby, you ain't got to worry about that. Your husband should be wondering why I'm looking over here." And then they both just start laughing, you know. But yeah, it all depends what the situation is with the staring.
Okay.
You know, once you accept
Like,
once you accept the fact that you're unique, you know people are gonna stare anyway.
just like Reverend Devon said, it's about them, not you, because you're comfortable in who you are.
Right.
Good, good. Anyone else care to share? No stares. All right. So you kind of answered a two question because you said, well, my next question was, do you feel like you always have to protect yourself when you go out in public? You did mention, Minister Ice, that sometimes you have to have your guard up, depends on the area that you're in. So I'm going to shift this conversation to a different route. Okay. We have some people on this panel that are parents, you know, and it's wonderful being a parent. It's wonderful times raising children. So that leads me to my next question. How is it raising children as a transgender, especially trans male?
That's been a journey. I think for me, because I came into their lives, so I didn't have children of my own, which was a lot to deal with and process in and of itself. Like in those young years, like, you know, you consider this process and be like, well, can I have kids? And so yeah, I was blessed eventually to have some children, and I'm thankful for it. But it was, I think the hardest part was figuring out when to tell them, because they were fairly young. I think they were 7 and 9 when I first came around. And y'all know Morgan. Yo, when I told her, she was so mad at me. She was mad for like 3 days. And like in kid years, like that's forever and a day. But she was mad because, like, you know, we had bonded and we had gotten pretty close. And I think she felt like, not that I lied to her, but that I didn't share everything with her. Cause like, you know, we was bonding and you know, she was like, I thought we was cool. She was so mad. I felt horrible. But parenting, I think for me, it's more or less parenting is parenting. It's not easy being trans or cis. Like there's no instruction manual at all. But I think one of my biggest worries before was you know, how other people would treat them. Because I was like, I don't hide anything. If you ask me, I'll tell you, you know, the tea, or, you know, you can Google me and you'll find everything, whatever. So I think for me, I was more concerned with how they would be treated, which it's never really been an issue. And if y'all know anything about kids this generation, they don't stand for none of that. So I was like, at this point, I don't even worry. And now I'm more worried that she'll get into a fight trying to defend me. Um, you know, but I think it was for me just the process of, okay, when to tell them, am I ready to tell them? Again, that fear of rejection kind of thing. And then just kind of going through your regular parenting woes. I think for me more so it was the process of coming to terms that I would not have my own children, which, you know, these kids are linked to me in spirit. Like it don't have to be a blood thing. You know, I was sitting there and I would think about, I was like, well, you know, who's gonna leave me offerings on the altar? Who's gonna put some tacos on the altar for me after I make my transition to the other side? And I was like, these kids over here. It's not about like, you know, having to have a blood bond, because it's more than enough spirit to go around. And that was a lot to process. I think sometimes for me, you know, I think everybody at some point in time wants a little mini them. But I'm okay with not having like my own kids. But yeah, this parenting journey has been interesting. You learn to definitely you think different, you move different, and it's someone else depending on you. And it don't matter what kind of stuff you got going on internally or your fears or anything like that. You gotta come through for these little people, or now teenage people. So
Oh, such wonderful years.
like, can they turn 28 already? Because I feel like once you turn 28, then it's like, you know, you're an adult and y'all pray for me.
That's when you're gonna wish it was back again.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mm.
It was much the same for me. I don't have any blood children, but I have 9 love children. It was intended by God for me to help raise children, because almost every relationship, you know, there was a child or children involved. My husband has 3, and then I have 1 from a previous relationship who I'm still in contact with, and there's another like 9. And it was awesome. It's just been awesome. I too worried like who's gonna take care of me when I get old, or who's gonna check in on me. But I'm pretty sure at least a few of them. One of them sit behind me right now. So, I'm pretty sure that they're gonna treat me like blood when the time comes. But it was interesting when they were, well, when my oldest was younger, because kids would ask questions like, oh, why doesn't your dad have a beard and a mustache like my dad? And I just told her, because I can't wear it to work. I have to shave for work. because we weren't ready to talk to her about this. She was like 5 or 6. And I don't know how she finally found out. I think she probably overheard it at church or something. But she was a teenager by then, and we were ready to have, then we could have conversations about it. But it's been a journey. At times it's been a struggle, because I'm a step parent, so I get that you're not my daddy. And I never took it as, you can't be my daddy. I always took it as, yeah, you're the step parent, so you're not really my parent. But like I said, I feel an affinity to all of them, and I don't think the stuff that I worried about early on, the first set, I don't have those worries anymore.
Okay, that's good. Yes, it is. It is a hassle. I wouldn't say hassle. It can be difficult raising children. It's fun. It's fun, and then you have your days. It's like, oh, I just need my me time. So I get it. With that being said, I know. I'm sorry, you were about to say something?
I was just saying, what's me time? I don't know that. I don't understand. I don't have a frame of reference for it.
Normally, you don't get that, especially with 9 of them. You have to go hide somewhere and lock the door.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone is into animation, but Transylvania 2, where this I think they were werewolves or no, jackal or something. The animals that have a whole lot of children, right? And they just had and they went on a cruise, and they got locked in the closet. The parents got locked in the closet accidentally, and the kids were just running around. So at the end of the cruise, we discovered that the parents were locked in the closet. And when they came out of the closet, right, it's like, best vacation ever.
I bet.
Yes.
Hey, you guys are talking about parenting. Wait till you get to the grandparenting stage.
Oh.
That's I'm telling you.
I'm already there.
Hey, look, that's where the fun begins. I'm telling you.
Can't wait. I cannot wait.
It's something about them grandbabies. It's grandbabies. There's a special something.
They're gonna get spoiled all the time. Get spoiled.
Because I was blessed to come into a family with 5 children, and now 14 grandbabies. The children I love the children. The children are grown, so I didn't get a chance to, but with the grandbabies, with there's 4 of them, there's 4 or 5 that's still coming up. Man, that's like the best feeling ever. I watch my grandbabies. Or the 4-year-old calls me Papa. We never instructed her to do that or anything. One day she was in the living room and she was like, Papa. And me and the wife are looking at each other like, who's she talking to? There's nobody else in here but us. And she was like, Papa, something's wrong with the TV. So the wife looks at me like, you don't need masculine energy up in here. Go check. And when I went in there, she was like, oh, Papa, I love you. My grandbabies make my day. Oh, my grandbabies, they make my day. And Father's Day, one of the grandbabies, he walks in the house because he was not in when we arrived, and he walked in the house. Happy Father's Day. And that almost put tears in my eyes. I'm telling you, wait till the grandparent days come. Them special.
I hear about them, but I can wait. All right, I'll just have a couple more questions because I know it's getting kind of late here. You did mention about Reverend Marcus. Your fear is your child might have to fight to protect you. So my question is, have y'all been bullied when y'all was going through your process and going through the transition? Have y'all been bullied about it? And if so, how did you handle it?
I don't think I've been bullied. I think you get off comments, but it wasn't ever really any bullying. Like it was, I feel like, well, for me, my experiences, they were like usually cis males, and they were trying to be supportive, but it wasn't like, nah, you can't do that no more. And I'm like, yes, I can. So it wasn't so much bullying, but I think it was just um, off or ignorant comments. Um, like I said, I ain't really giving people a whole lot of chance to really be rejecting me or bullying me. I was like, no, we ain't got time for that. Um, so it was just really just dealing with people trying to give men advice. But it wasn't really anything that I was interested in, or it wasn't in alignment with the man that I was building. Because like I had transitioned at work, like, well, in that time frame in between deciding to grow out my beard and moving to Philadelphia. So I was like, I have all these guys like talking about, well, you can't do that no more. You can't dance to Beyonce. I was like, yes, I can dance to Beyonce. I will forever be dancing to Beyonce, and we're gonna twirl and dip and do all of these things and all of this manliness. And there's not anything that you can say about it. They're like, "Oh, you're a man now. You can't do that." And I was like, I appreciate your input, but this man likes Beyonce. And if I want to be a single lady, then I will be a single lady. But I'm thankful to not have to have been
I'm
in that.
thinking about it.
Say again.
So I'm thinking about it during my process. No, I think I was, yeah, like I don't. You want to go and do that to me, and I'm a grown man. You're not gonna talk to me in any kind of way. But when I was younger, people thought that they were, like hurting my feelings or whatever, talking about I was mannish and this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, that's a compliment. I don't know if you know, but you just complimented me. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate you seeing me. But, they just took it as, they just said the worst thing they could possibly say to me. It was always funny to me. It was always hilarious to me. But yeah, as through my actual transition.
Yeah, I've never really dealt with real bullying. I've just dealt with some ignorant cracks. And I mean by, people saying stupid things. I've dealt with that, but I always take the energy out of it anyway, And like Reverend Devon said, when you make cracks about me, like, oh, you look like a boy, I'd be like, thank you, or you don't act nothing like a girl. Thank you. You just don't know you're making my day. You really making my day. Or somebody says something like, you never were a girl. Oh, you get it. I didn't even have to explain it to you. You get it. So I've never dealt with. I don't think really I've even heard too many stories of trans men dealing with really being bullied. I hear more about it when it comes to our trans sisters. Because a lot of coming up, my best buddies were male. So, and that's usually, if somebody's gonna bully you, it's usually gonna be them not understanding or feeling like you want what they think they own, that type thing. But it's I've been cool in that department. Now, if I'm gonna speak very truthful, if I want to speak, I'll speak on what what sector of people have made me feel more uncomfortable. I hate to say it, but I would have to say my lesbian sisters. And the reason why I'm saying that is because once I transitioned, it's as if I had no space where they are. You need to go over there with them. And I'm like, okay, do you realize my mind and heart does not change? I'm still the same person. You know, they've made some of the rawest cracks in quote unquote outside society. But yeah. I have to tell them you don't have to worry about it. I'm not attracted to you, so let's keep it moving.
Yeah, can I just say, piggyback off of that, there were trans men, this is a few years ago, but there were trans men who were attacked at a lesbian bar. One of them was stabbed. And the motive I never really understood. The way I understand it is, a woman was attracted to one of the trans men, and he was, not interested. And then they were chased out of the bar, beaten, and one of them was stabbed. And it's like, we do this to each other. So you don't have to wait for a cisgender
Yes.
person to do something to you or say something to you, because LGBTQ, we do it to each other.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much division. So like I said that I never felt bullied, and I didn't feel like people said or did anything to me, but then that takes me back to those times when, like, the gay guy who I was attracted to, and I approached him, he was like, I only date gay men. And I've heard, I only date real men. And so that is a form of bullying. It is a form of devaluing. So I recant the former question, answer to that question.
Man, how much realer does it get? You transition on purpose. It was not an accident.
Right.
This guy told me one time that that I wasn't real, and I said, well, it all depends what your definition of real is. It may be slightly different from mine. And I said, well, let me tell you a little story about my realness. I transitioned on purpose.
Mm.
You came here male. So I think I'm just as real as you. And that kind of shook him. Like, what did you just say? You came here as male. And what I'm doing is on purpose.
Mm.
And after a while, he kind of caught it, and he was like, yeah, you got a point there. So who are you to say I'm not real?
Mm.
And what does real look like? Because I know some men that were born male, and they're not real. Not when it comes to my definition of what a man is supposed to be. So what is real? Where's that book at? Show me the book that says this is what a real man looks like. Because we all have different opinions of what a real man is. Mine may be slightly different from Quincy's. Quincy's might be slightly different from Marcus, and down the line. So Don't come at me with that real stuff. Cause you come with me with that real stuff, I got something for you.
I don't know if you might have heard the phrase metrosexual. And that goes to what's a real man, because they would go get the mani pedis and the waxes and the, you know, all of that. So the eyebrows and the facials, and so that wasn't supposed to be a real man. So they came up with, yes, men do get this. So that now they were metrosexuals.
Yeah.
Okay, really.
Yeah. Cause I seen some brothers' eyebrows that are just for the gods, immaculate.
Face is just snap, isn't it?
Yes.
What? Shaped.
Yeah.
Nails, like, oh, really?
Deep, nails so done. Nails longer than female nail. No.
Lined for Jesus.
Exactly. So the era that I came from, a real man doesn't do that. So what is real?
Right, right. Exactly. Exactly.
Exactly. Right. So last question for tonight is, what advice do you give to someone who's starting their transition to trans male? What advice can you give them?
Well, I'm gonna say this to anybody that transition: be your authentic self, and don't hold so tight to titles, because you're gonna find through your journey of transitioning, you're gonna evolve. Today you might feel this way. Next week you might feel something else. So don't let people pressure you into who you are. Be who God has appointed you to be. And that has nothing to do with the approval of humankind. Nothing. So that's the advice I would give.
That's good. I would advise connect with people. You don't have to go through this journey alone, especially in this day and age of technology. Like actually connect with people, like not just, through the phones and, texting or what have you. I guarantee you, you're not the only one in your city. You know, seek fellowship and don't neglect the emotional and mental aspects of transition. Like we can get caught up and hyped up in the physicalities of everything and not pay attention to everything else. It is just as important. So connect with people and honor your mental and emotional health would be my advice.
Good.
Okay. Good advice. Anyone else? All right.
Just be confident. Be confident. Be confident. Don't let people scare you or guilt you or talk you out of what you know you need to do for you. Like I think the biggest part of transition is putting yourself first for a change. Because a lot of people put it off because of mama and religion and all of that, and just put you first. Be confident in it. This is who I need to be. This is where I need to go with it, and go forward. Go forward, young man.
Okay.
That's real.
So we learned tonight.
Bottom line. Just be sure of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Be sure of who you are. And I said, connect with others and stay in contact, know, and get as much information about the process as you can.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. So definitely, yes, be confident whenever decisions you make, whatever you do, that's a great plus. Reaching out, connected, stay connected to one another, because you're absolutely right. There is someone else in your neighborhood, in your city, that's probably chances are going through the same thing that you're going through. Stay informed, get as much information as possible, because, that knowledge is important, you know. Therefore, if you get that knowledge and that information, you know the right path to go through. And as always, don't get stuck on titles. Don't get stuck in saying, okay, you're just going to be that person. Break out from them labels, break out from them titles. There's great advice that the panelists tonight can give to those who's actually experiencing this or going through or thinking about and starting. I want to thank you on behalf of Unity Fellowship of Charleston for joining us tonight. I'd like to thank my wonderful guests tonight who did an amazing job sharing their stories with us. I think that take a lot of courage, it takes a lot of confidence, and I just hope that you encourage someone else to be able to come out and share their story and not be afraid of the backbite, not be afraid of what may happen or any consequences that may happen. For the audience that watched, thank y'all again. Sorry it was on a little bit too long tonight, but I hope you got enough information, more information. If you have questions on Facebook Live, after I log off here, I'm gonna go through and see, and I will go and respond to your questions if we didn't answer it tonight here live. And we welcome you back again next Wednesday, because remember, this is Men's Month, the last Wednesday of June. And we're going to have great guests, a great panel again. And the topic for next Wednesday is going to be connecting my sexuality with my spirituality. Okay, so a lot of people have struggles with, sexuality and spirituality. But if you one of these people or you're want to know and you're struggling this, we encourage you to sign on 7:30 Facebook Live next Wednesday, which is June 28th, and listen. And maybe some of your questions could be answered about connecting your sexuality with your spirituality. Thank you once again, sweethearts, and dear heart, everybody. You have a great evening and a great night. Thank you again.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
Right, student clergy.
Night.